It's the Pennyworth podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Season 3, Episode 7 of Pennyworth, Don't Push It.
You must carry a lot of pain. So many ghosts. It must be terrible.
Mustn't grumble.
Stiff upper lip.
Well, it's what made England great, innit? When bad things happen to everyone, you just get on with it.
But you don't. Your ghosts hold you back, I know they do. Don't you want to live your life to its fullest?
No offence, but what kind of balmy interrogation is this? You should be asking me why I'm here. Who I'm working with, why I'm after Mr. Kin. You're a bit off course, love.
All in good time.
Welcome back, fellow governors. This is TV Podcast Industries again, talking about Pennyworth Season 3. This time we're talking about Episode 7, Don't Push It. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow governors and fellow Gothamites. I am one of your other hosts, John.
Yeah, nice to be back on Pennyworth. We took a little detour in between the last episode of Pennyworth for Halloween. Went over and chatted about Werewolf by Night from Marvel over on Disney+.
Yes, we certainly did.
It was a fun chat.
Exactly, yeah. A homage to the classic black and white horror movies.
Yeah, it was fun. Even though we got one of the actresses in that movie completely wrong and completely mistook her for a completely different actress, which we can't change now.
Doppelganger, I would say. Doppelganger.
But we try not to make those mistakes often. But we are back here talking about Pennyworth, Season 3, Episode 7, Don't Push It. This episode was written by John Stevens, who wrote 13 episodes of Gotham. We mentioned him last week, having written Episode 6 as well. And this episode, interestingly, was directed by Danny Cannon.
Woohoo! It's almost like the team is back together. Danny Cannon behind the camera, John Stevens producing, writing, and Bruno Heller as well, doing showrunner and executive producer as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff.
Danny Cannon and Bruno Heller being the creators of the show. And for some reason, with the credits as they have been for the last couple of episodes, I thought Danny Cannon had moved on from Pennyworth and we weren't going to see an episode from the last time he directed an episode of Pennyworth was back in Season 2, Episode 2. So it's been a long time since Danny Cannon was behind the camera on Pennyworth.
It really has been. And interestingly, I would say this is one of my favourite episodes as well. Interesting,
yeah. I think there's definitely some very interesting touches in here. But I wonder if it's because he's working on his new show.
Ew.
Yeah, my interesting fact about Danny Cannon for this episode. So we know Danny Cannon from Gotham, which was the Batman prequel show where where young Bruce Wayne is growing up in Gotham eventually to become the Batman. Now we're seeing Alfred Pennyworth, the prequel show to that show where Alfred Pennyworth is growing to become Batman's butler, effectively. And the next show that Danny Cannon is involved in is Gotham Knights. Not the game, not the video game that I've been playing solidly for the last week or so. A TV show based on Gotham heroes after Batman's gone, after Bruce Wayne dies.
Interesting.
So he's jumped to the entirety of Batman history, effectively. He directed the pilot episode of that, and apparently has been liked so much by the network CW that they have commissioned a series out of it after seeing that. Filming started that in the middle of September of this year, expected to come out in 2023. And this is all after all those crazy cancellation stuff that HBO Max did. So still on the books to come next year.
Well, that's very interesting. And to be honest, a good pair of hands, really good style to his production and how he directs for sure. So I'm expecting it'll be in safe hands.
Yeah. Let's hope so. It's a really interesting concept. And I know Misha Collins from Supernatural is in there playing Harvey Dent, which is an interesting casting choice. Yeah, very interested to see what they do over there. A new CW superhero show after all the other ones have been cancelled now. As far as I remember, I think they're all done. So this will be the new universe starting up next year. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Pennyworth, Season 3, Episode 7, Don't Push It, this dream team of John Stevens and Danny Cannon?
Sure. Following Alfred Pennyworth's promise to Zara Kinn to find and bring back her incarcerated father, he and Dave Boy search the Outer Hebrides of northern Scotland for any sign of the prison he's held in. After a wasted day searching, Alfie is bothered by seeing an impossible buoy in the desolate landscape. Locals tell Alfie that the prison is there, but it is without walls, and he should follow the buoy he saw. With Dave Boy unwilling to leave the comfortable pub, Alfie locates the prison entrance on his own. He's immediately hit with memories of the worst moment in his life. However, the warden quickly knows Alfie is there and increases the prison's defense system, the psychic fence, to capture him. Alfie pushes through the mind-affecting device and locates Mr. Kinn before being able to escape. With the reluctant inmate, Alfie gets captured by the warden and her team. As she tries to use her mysterious mind-altering tools to fix Alfie, he's saved by Lucius Fox and Dave Boy. Lucius explains that the psychic fence is one of the people with enhancements he tried to cure in the past. The powerful P-Dub brought Alfie here to put him out of his misery. Alfie kindly obliges and returns Zara's father to her. Meanwhile, after his father's murder, Thomas Wayne is no longer responding to calls from his wife Martha. She is torn between going to Gotham or investigating a connection between John Salt's mysterious experiments following his death and the English government. A lead Prime Minister Aziz seems desperate for her to ignore.
Good stuff. As you say, a really stylish episode. This episode, an interesting direct follow-on from last week where we heard that they were going to go to Scotland, off to the Hebrides, to try and find Mr. Kinn. So most of the episode spent around Alfie and Dave Boy this time.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting. For me, this just evoked the desolate British sci-fi that I love so much. Everything up in the Outer Hebrides, whether it is due to the landscape or just the concept of the psychic fence, it felt like a sci-fi episode of that dark, pretty sort of bleak feeling that I think British sci-fi does so well, and I quite frankly really, really enjoy. The whole episode is just sort of disconcerting and slightly uncomfortable, especially with Alfie going through his memories, and you're just wondering, what is this psychic fence? And then being told that it's not a thing. You know? So I really, really enjoyed this a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, it's great. It had that feeling of like Sherlock Holmes and the Hen of the Baskervilles type of style to it, along with those kind of chrysalids or those
or the Midwich cookers. You know, this idea of something like the Outer Hebrides, the countryside, perfectly normal, but underneath just something being slightly off, and even the locals knowing about it, but kind of being closed inwards. You know, is really, really good. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's kind of start there. I don't really have a huge amount of points for this episode, but the main kind of overarching point from the episode is the prison without walls, is this attempt to free Zara's father from this prison that Alfie knows he's in, if he can find it. He got a small tip-off from Lucius that they expect that you'll find a prison up somewhere in the Outer Hebrides, and they spend an entire day walking back and forth trying to find something on this landscape that is completely flat, completely desolate, basically, apart from the occasional sheep. And that brings my first question. By the time the reveal comes later in the episode that there is this psychic fence that shows your worst nightmare to you, I was wondering whether that moment with Dave Boy where he's going to the toilet and the sheep are all around him, it looks almost like he's peeing on a sheep the first time, and then later you see him again relieving himself and he's surrounded by sheep. Is this psychic fence delivering sheep to Dave Boy? Is that his greatest fear?
That could well be it, to be honest.
It's a weird one, I know.
Yeah. I mean, Dave Boy's really good in this episode because it does feel desolate. He brings that humour. I mean, even just, the classic line of, we're in the arse end of effing nowhere.
Yeah. The
whole sheep congregating around him. And like you say, is that his bad memory? He had a dreadful thing as a child with a herd of sheep. Who knows?
Yeah. Or is it just that Dave Boy is a kind of a guy that doesn't live on fear? He doesn't use fear to drive him. So the only thing that the psychic fence could pull out of him is that he doesn't really like sheep. So keep putting sheep beside him.
Maybe, or his mind was still so affected by the lullaby drug that the psychic fence can't enter into it. It's too scrambled still. But I mean, I do like the comedic element that Dave Boy brings here. I mean, even just his reluctance to leave the pub. You know, they've been searching around, they can't find anything, and Dave Boy is just, let's get to the pub.
Absolutely.
And then there, it's like he's not willing to follow Alfie any further, and he's kind of just happy to sit there and nurse his drink for the whole day.
More pints,
as Alfie goes back out to search for this prison that he just cannot find. So I really like that. I also really like the fact that, you know, within that, Dave Boy is questioning why they're doing this. You know, why is Alfie being so persistent here, especially with how things ended with him and Zara Kinn, and the knowledge that she has. And that's also to that other point, it kind of introduces to us as the audience that Alfie is trying to sort of disaggregate himself from what he used to be to what he wants to be.
Yes.
And effectively, Miss Kinn's slap to the face has brought that into sharp relief. And similarly, Dave Boy is trying to process why, you know, his mate, his former army colleague, is doing something that doesn't make any sense to him and that they wouldn't have done in the past. And that's because Alfie is on this journey as well. And we get that more and more with when he meets, you know, Mr. Kinn as well, where Mr. Kinn effectively says, tell me why I shouldn't shoot you, because he recognizes that this is the person that kidnapped him, ultimately from Morocco back those years before. And, you know, and he says, this had better be good. And Alfie, in that moment, is because he wants to be a new person. He's almost looking for some kind of rebirth. He doesn't want to be the person that kidnaps people or is that dodgy geezer kind of feel to it. He wants to do something that has meaning and sort of refresh his life. And that's with the boy that is being projected, is being amplified through the psychic fence. And that whole memory is one that is ingrained and it is really troubling for Alfie.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I do love that scene between him and Mr. Kim, where he's explaining it's the way that Zara looked at him that makes him know that he wants to change who he is and wants to change and move on from the things he's done in his past. And that's really important to this journey that he's going on. You're totally right. Dave Boy's not really willing to do this whole job because, well, there's no money involved. At least he gets a whole packet of biscuits out of it, but that's about the only payment he's going to get out of this. But he's not willing to stay around for too long here. It seems like they maybe did a full day searching the Outer Hebrides. No real leads until they get back to the pub and they get the mysterious
love it
patron of the pub.
Yeah, the old fella with his cryptic clues where he says, it's a prison without walls. And it's, you know, Dave Boy's sat there with his pint going, this guy's cracked. You know, they start kind of sort of squaring off against one another as he calls him a ginger mushroom, the old guy. But ultimately, you know, all those insults being thrown, there's this this old fella's so cryptic. And, but it seems understandable to Alfie because he saw this boy by the two standing stones when he was looking through the binoculars.
And he absolutely knows this boy couldn't be here. He absolutely knows he couldn't be here. And he knows that it's too real to be a flash from his past or something like that.
Exactly.
He knows there's something here.
I think as well just how that whole scene was shot with the camera really in on the old guy's face being cryptic. It really felt reminiscent of old horror, old sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as the kind of the crazy yokel starts talking cryptically about the meaning of life or the way things are around here. And it was just, it's almost like focusing in on the eyeballs to try and give you that sense, well, they're crazy.
Yeah.
There's that nod to that, way of directing. And then you have just the comedy of Dave Boy just getting irritated by him, with then Alfie sort of realizing maybe there's something to what this crazy cryptic guy is saying.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the fun of it, isn't it? It's this old guy that's effectively saying, well, I haven't seen it myself, but the stories say that this is a prison without walls, and you should follow that ghost that you saw on the moors, effectively, that kind of idea, this thing that's taken into loads of short stories and loads of other movies in the past, this feeling that you get as an outsider when you go into a small local pub, and gets amplified and makes you feel like everything is much more heightened, much more supernatural for you. These are two London lads in a pub in Scotland, a locals pub in Scotland. Instantly on arrival, they're outsiders, and now they're hearing the local tales that could lead them to what they're looking for, So they have definitely used that story as a kind of jumping off point there.
And I mean, Dave Boy, to me, his attitude is probably the more real in that moment, because he hasn't had those projections, or he doesn't know that he has.
Exactly.
Well, neither does Alfie, but it's not hit him, and it's not resonated with him in the same way. But, Dave Boy's thought really is, right, taxi, train, back to London.
Back to London.
Yeah,
off I go. Yeah. This is the reason I left Scotland in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah. But let's talk about the kind of psychic fence itself. And inside the prison. I love that this kind of conversation happens between Alfie and the warden, that the reason why he's able to defend against this psychic fence is because he uses kind of stiff upper lip Britishness. Yeah. So I won't let anything get to me. I can fight back against it. But she's effectively got a way of pushing more power through this to target somebody who hasn't been within this system before.
Yeah, effectively, the hallucinations become so overpowering. It disables you. You kind of black out as you go through the memory. And so that they're able to capture Alfie. And you see with the other inmates, they're kind of walking round almost like zombies, apart from Mr. Kin, who accepts the memories and the pain. Like he's at ease with that.
Yeah.
But this whole concept of the psychic fence, I just thoroughly enjoyed, both just within the show, because it links back to the people with enhancements, and why they're kind of being rounded up effectively and researched and investigated. But that all of a sudden you get this notion that it's not just radio waves in some way, or some kind of sound wave, that it isn't a machine at all, but a boy with these special abilities, which is revealed by Lucius, who has dealt with this boy before. And it suddenly becomes as well a lot more intimate. You began thinking this psychic fence was this automated machine that just sent out the particular signals in order to put people in this state. You suddenly realize it's not a machine, it's an actual human being.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get to the point where you're told that the boy did this to use the memory outside, could sense and latch on, link in, connect into Alfie's psyche, because he wanted Alfred to come in order effectively to put him out of his misery, his pain, his torment, his incarceration effectively, by the warden and the government.
Yeah. And it's really interesting hearing, Lucius say that he dealt with him in the past, and this way that he thought that he created to control or help the kid control his powers has actually been turned into a way to of them to use him as this prison. So I really like that. And I really like this as a concept. And I feel sometimes with Pennyworth, they have so many great ideas and they kind of throw them out there. And we don't get an exploration of it as much. You know, this, I think, is a really good thread. This idea that Lucius has been dealing with these, enhanced people for the last few years. And sometimes he makes mistakes because nobody's ever dealt with these kind of things in the world before. And this mistake has now led to people being driven insane in this prison, people walking around like zombies, you know, people being trapped inside without any way of getting out. And anybody who goes in to try to help them out could end off in the prison as well. You know, I think that's a really interesting concept that could have been explored over a few episodes.
It's that great concept that it brings out here. And it links to Alfie, you know, and what he's conflicted by about who he was and ultimately what he wants to be for himself, which he, as he describes to Mr. Khan. But this psychic fence is that we're the prison that traps ourselves inside, however that may be. You don't need the rails. You don't need the machine gun turrets, you know, the locked doors. It's you trapping yourself here in your own memories and your own obsession as well. So I just thought it was really, really good. And then that connects in with Alfie, as I said, wanting to kind of come out of his cocoon state and change in some way, be a better person for him as much as anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, there's a couple of things with the warden that I wanted to talk about here because I'm kind of left with a lot of questions about this side of it. You know, I really loved the idea when she is trying to explain this psychic fence and then suddenly turns and realizes that he wants Alfie here because she can read what's going on in the boy's mind, effectively. So she realizes that that's why Alfie has been pushed towards coming to this place, not just to save Zara's dad. It's also because the machine wants him here. It's not repelling him back, effectively. I think that's a really interesting concept. I love that she's almost reverential to this enhanced person who's able to do the thing that she was never able to do as a regular psychologist or psychiatrist or a regular doctor. She could never get people to follow the instructions she was giving to them. So this warden is going, this is the best thing ever. We have someone that can force them to confront their fears, and I can channel it as well. So that's a really interesting concept.
It's that real dystopian view of science gone mad in a sense, where it's the process to come to the answer, and whatever and whoever is in the way, it doesn't matter. It is the means justify the ends. And in this case, for her, the means of this psychological test or mind torture that she does on Alfie, along with all the other inmates. It doesn't matter that she's got a boy held downstairs, trapped, imprisoned for the rest of his life. She ultimately sort of brings the illumination to this story that we see, that almost a story within a story of Alfred's memories of this kid, during the war that he was fighting in. And she just says, your ghosts hold you back. You know, what is it that frightens you? And we will find out, shall we? It's just the way that was done, and then it going into his memory, and we see what happens with the boy, that the boy gets a name, Levin. It's that sense of having given up on the boy by just sending him back when the boy wanted to stay with him, rather than having that commitment. It's, you know, and again, the whole comparisons with the young Bruce and how he treats Bruce, like we saw in Gotham, being the new mentor, this paternal figure. And this is almost saying, well, what would happen if he hadn't done that? Then Bruce would have gone off and something bad would have happened. In this case, in a war-torn country, the kid steps on a mine and is blown up.
Exactly. So it's a nice parallel there, or a nice alternate world, I suppose, to what could happen if Alfie doesn't take care of the next ward that's maybe he has to take care of in the future. So, some lessons learned here for Alfie as well. One question I do have, though, that I was wondering about, the other question I have about what the warden was saying, is she says that all of the security guards are broken, I think is the way that she describes them. She jokingly says it's because they're all idiots and can't even form a search party. But she says there's something different about them that means they can't be affected by the psychic fence. And
she says that they're shielded because she threatens one of them to have it removed if he doesn't, track Alfie down or something. So I think they're in some way shielded, and I guess her as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder if it was just because she's specifically chosen these people to work here because there's something different about them and about their pasts, or they've had some, I think she says it's some major traumatic event to one of them, says your father beat you as a child to him, as if that's the thing that maybe puts up that barrier, puts up the shield for them. So maybe they're all chosen in that way. So I just thought that, again, another interesting thread in a couple of lines of dialogue that I'd love to have seen explored a bit more in the show itself.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah. That was really good. Also, let's just quickly talk about Dave Boy and Lucius in the pub together. Again, these two on screen just work so well. I love the kind of prim and properness of Lucius. He's sitting there with a cup of tea and some scones, waiting for Dave Boy to wake up after the couple of pints he had last night, kind of thing. But the two of them interacted together work so well. Dave Boy kind of not really understanding what Lucius is saying to him, but happy to see him there, and hopefully they can go off and rescue Alfie. And then the flip around on the other side, where we see all of these security guards have come to take them and capture Dave Boy and Lucius, and actually, with it off screen, Dave Boy's beaten up all four of them.
Well, I love what he says to the warden, where he tells her, you sent 4 weedy choir boy types. Even Lucius took one of them.
Exactly, yeah. It works really well, because you're totally expecting that, Alfie's escape plan is going to be broken because, well, she sent security guards. They're, of course, going to capture Dave Boy and Lucius, but off screen, he's taking care of it all. That's really good fun.
Yeah, definitely.
But of course, with the enhanced person taken out now, the prison walls are gone. Even though it's a prison without walls, prison walls are gone. So Alfie's able to save Zara's father and bring him back to London. And I like that there's another redemption moment here with Alfie when he does bring Mr. Kin back to Zara. She forgives him. She says that she regrets the words that she used last time. But again, he did kidnap her father, but he has reunited the two of them together. And Mr. Kin does say to him, you've now shown me that you are a good man, and she's apologized and sent him off with a kiss. So
and he says, Alfie says to Mr. King, I'm still, I'm working out my ghosts.
Yes,
it's still, he's still got to deal with it. But it is that journey of Alfred as well. Yeah.
I don't think I ever wanted a straight line journey for Alfie Pennyworth to become Butler Alfred Pennyworth, the Batman to Batman. I never wanted a straight journey, but I definitely wanted to see progress over the course of the seasons as to how he got his abilities, which we know were from the SAS, and how he moved from being this guy that just sleeps with everybody around to being a patriarch of a family unit and having that entire responsibility for the Wayne Foundation after Thomas and Martha went. And I feel like this episode is a really good stepping stone towards that movement, definitely. More so than a lot of the episodes we've seen in the past. It's a lot of show on screen. It's showing us the change that's within Alfie in the last couple of seasons, and it works really, really well for that. I think it's why this episode works as well as it does.
Definitely, yeah.
Our other major point really is about Martha. The end of last episode was one of the most shocking that we've seen in all of Pennyworth, and probably even all of Gotham. We saw what we believe is Thomas Wayne murdering his father. And this episode kind of picks up that thread through Martha Wayne and her reaction to it. So what we learn is that Martha hasn't actually had any contact with Thomas, despite contacting him every day since he went over. And we know that she's really scared of what he's going to do, just because he was under that hypnosis when he tried to kill her.
Exactly. So, but does she know that he killed her? She knows Patrick Wayne is dead.
She does.
But I don't think she knows that he is involved.
No.
But again,
the indication is that she suspects that it could have been Thomas. There was nobody caught.
Yeah.
He covered his tracks. She's fully clear on that. Thomas went off with a grudge about his father and what his father did to him. So she is concerned that this could have happened because she saw Thomas, remember, get up in the middle of the night and take his gun with him and go downstairs and point his gun at her in the middle of the night, even after being controlled by the drugs. So you can see there's a suspicion there, and she's worried about it, and especially because his father's dead and Thomas isn't answering the phone anymore.
Yeah, and their daughter is asking, "Where's Daddy?" And I mean, I do like that it resolves where she, tries to call him. I like the fact that you don't even really see Thomas. You just see a glass of whiskey in Wayne Manor with the ring blurring out, where, and over on the answer phone message where it's just, where are you? What are you doing? But I love you.
Yeah.
It's, hopefully that is the 3 words that Thomas needs to hear, because they had a bit of a rocky start in this season.
Absolutely. It may come down to a choice here. She says it to Mrs. P when Mrs. Pennyworth is talking to her, that there's a possibility she could take Samantha and just travel over to Gotham and reunite with Thomas over there, and maybe they can work things out over there. So this may be the impetus to get out of London, get out of the UK and move back to Gotham. Yeah. So I thought there's a little nod to that there.
I think so. I think so too. I think the only reason that she isn't now is because not only is she worried about Thomas, but she's also worried about Prime Minister Aziz because of new information that's come to her about the death of John Salt, a manila folder with information about his experiments in the same vein as Gully Troy, and creating this new model army for the Raven Union. It's also that when Martha confronts Aziz about this, there's absolutely no comeback from Aziz. He's very closed down about discussing it, and she's trying to insist with him, but this is level 7, what the government is doing, why wasn't I informed of this? And he basically tells her, we need to dust that file and find the leak. Who has leaked this? Because so this is seemingly very sensitive, and whether it relates to the boy, the psychic fence as well, that they are effectively using people with enhancements for various defense, detention, whatever it might be, for, in quotes, the greater good. Again, it feels dystopian. I'm wondering, it feels at odds with potentially how Prime Minister Aziz should be. Yeah. From what we've seen of him, what he fought against with, in terms of the Raven Union. Yeah. But
we've always said, though, Aziz is a person that you're not sure whether you can trust. From right back in the beginning when he was Inspector Aziz up until now, you're not sure if you can trust his intentions, whether he is doing things for the greater good or whether there's some other side project or something like that. So this does fall into his character again. There's so many interesting things going on here. I wonder why they chose level 7. Firstly, because that was, in Marvel terms, over in S.H.I.E.L.D., that was the highest level you could get to. Everything in level 7 was for director's eyes only, effectively. So an interesting choice there. That, as you know, I'm a big S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, so I liked the reference there. Yeah, but then also just exactly that conversation with Aziz, he's not saying, how did you know about that? She absolutely shouldn't know about this. And the level of detail she goes to is what really freaks Aziz out. The levels that she's going through of the information she has available is really freaking him out. And it's not that he wants her, and not once does he apologize for her not knowing about it. He goes, we need to get rid of this leak. He never once says to her, I'll explain this to you, and we also need to get rid of the leak. Yeah. You need to plug that gap right now. I'm not telling you any information at all. Need to close that down, shut it down, kill them effectively. Yeah.
So, and by the way, when I said dust the file, I didn't mean with a feather duster. True. I mean for Prince. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So I thought that was all really interesting. And also, if the show's to be believed, once again, you can never believe shows about dead people unless you see them in the morgue, or anybody that's died off screen. But if the show's to be believed, John Salt is definitely dead.
Yes.
That was the end of John Salt. That's what the caller to Martha Wayne is telling them. John Salt's out of the picture, and all of his stuff has been taken by the British government, by the English government, to work on and incorporate into their own plans. So that's a real surprise again. It sounds like even if John Salt came back, he wouldn't be able to get all of his stuff. They found his body dead and then took all of his stuff, right? So this is pretty much as much confirmation as you can get that John Salt's gone.
Absolutely, and also throws heavy suspicion that Bet is gone
Maybe,
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like you say, until you see a body, can't necessarily tell, but it certainly adds weight. Yeah.
Let's hope not. Let's hope Bet's coming back in some way in the future. But I think definitively they're saying it's the end of John Salt. Anything else about Thomas and Aziz and the English government's plans for developing the experiments that John Salt's been working on?
No, nothing from me. Just have one note. Yeah, my only note really from the episode is that the warden is Sally Phillips, who is a comedic actor. Starred in a lot of British comedy series, such as Miranda and I Am Alan Partridge, but she also created one of my favourite shows growing up in the 90s, which was Smack the Pony.
Oh, very good.
Which was very good.
Yeah,
and she was in the US sitcom Veep as the British Prime Minister.
Yes, good choice for that.
I think it was the American adaptation of In the Thick of It.
It's similar. Yeah, definitely similar. I think it only just finished there last year or the year before. So that's another great show. Yeah, Sally Phillips, so recognisable, but almost always in posh comedy roles. That's kind of her go-to is upper class comedy for a lot of the roles that she's been in. So really interesting to see her in this much darker role of this manipulative warden. Interestingly, no name for the character in the credits or anything like that. So she's just the warden, and I guess she no longer has a prison now. So I guess she'll just go back to being the doctor in the future. Good stuff. Did you catch any things we need to translate from this episode, John? We spent a lot of time here in Scotland, so it was more for me. It was more things that Dave Boy said or the people around him. That's the only things I caught from this episode.
No, I didn't really pick anything out. I think I was following the story too much. Yeah.
The only two that I've got one which is we came in dressed as Screws. Screws is something that we'd recognise quite a lot, but Screws is security guards, of course. But I just liked I like the fact that they're using that term for them. And then the other big one that I got, because sometimes Dave Boy can say a whole sentence that can be incomprehensible. This one was, if we hoof it now, a pint and a jobby and a proper loo.
Exactly.
For our American listeners, that overall what he's looking forward to is hoofing it, which is running right now. If we go right now, we can get back before dark, and then a pint and finally getting to go to the toilet inside instead of having to pee on sheep like he has been doing for the last couple of days. So I love that phrase. It's a very Dave Boy kind of phrase like that. Good stuff. That's it. That's all I caught for this episode. But again, if you caught anything that you want explained or caught anything that we missed out, email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Pop it over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. There's a spoiler post up there and you can always drop in any quotes that we may have missed that you thought were interesting or want explained as well. Overall, John, how would you rate this episode?
For me, I would give this 4.5 psychic high roads out of 5 as they take the low road. Yes.
Excellent.
I I just really enjoyed this. It's been my favourite episode, actually, of the season. And I just think it really added to Pennyworth, to Alfred, and to how you can see him becoming the butler at Wayne Manor that we know from Gotham and from all the Batman comics.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it's a weird one, isn't it, to say that the best episode is an episode that didn't feature Bet, who's our favourite character, I think, on the show. It's weird to say that, but this is a really good episode.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
I'm glad of how it was put together and well written, well directed, and really well acted. Loved it overall. So I totally agree with you, John. Totally agree with you. We have a little bit of feedback, so let's head on over to our Royal Mail feedback section. A little bit of feedback that came in just after we released our episode last week. Over on Facebook, Jamie Lawton says, interesting differences in parenting techniques between Bet and Patrick Wayne. The well-respected pillar of the community giving up on his son after being bitch slapped, while the total psycho will endure pain and torture to save a baby, which isn't even her flesh and blood. Yet another reason Bet is such a great character.
Absolutely,
like
Jamie.
that.
Yeah, love the comparisons there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and Phil Boodle also sent in some thoughts, kind of agreeing with our speculation last week, saying, even though the shooter said goodbye dad, is it possible the shooter's not who we think it must be? A brother maybe? He was, after all, wearing a mask. Yeah, that was kind of our speculation last week. They could absolutely do a big twist where it's not Thomas Wayne.
It could have no moustache.
Yes,
it could be a moustache-linked crime.
It could be. It could be. Until that story's resolved, we really have no idea. But it is a real surprise that it was Thomas Wayne that killed his own father in the streets of Gotham. So I'm expecting a big explanation for that before the end of the season.
Yeah, it could actually be the reverse of the evil brother that doesn't have a moustache in this case.
Or maybe we've been following the evil brother all along.
Maybe.
Good stuff. Thanks so much for your thoughts. We want to hear from you about your thoughts about the whole season. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any thoughts that you have about any of the episodes that have aired. You can also subscribe to the podcast on any good or evil podcast catcher. Just search the Pennyworth Podcast or TV Podcast Industries to get access to all of our latest episodes about Pennyworth.
Yes, as well, share the podcast because, of course, sharing the podcast is what, Derek?
It's sharing the love.
Exactly.
And as far as I know, we're the only podcast that's covered every single episode of Gotham and every single episode of Pennyworth out there. So share it out there. Let other people know that we're covering every episode of this season of Pennyworth as well. Because I know there's lots of people who are checking this out for the first time now that it's over on HBO Max. So we'd love to have them listening along with us.
Definitely. We will be back next week with Pennyworth Season 3, Episode 8, Red Marauder.
Ooh.
Yes.
If that doesn't sound like a supervillain name, I don't know what does.
I know.
Could it be the person that goes up against Captain Blighty versus Red Marauder in a final battle? That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Could very well be.
Looking forward to episode 8. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow governors, for joining us. It is great chit-chatting about Pennyworth Season 3. Remember, in the meantime, though, keep watching, keep listening, and keep being vengeance.
Bye.
Bye.